How does it know my song?
Anj! Leave it alone!
In the aftermath of Dakar, Bonninger and Hathaway remain concerned over Marita, Lonnie, and Lane. An analysis by Nine revealing that at the very least Lonnie managed to make it off the Shamblo before it was destroyed. Sadly, Sosuke has no leads to follow to track Kaname from this, but they can hope Leonard died from his gunshot wound.
He doesn't. Sadly, they had a supply of aloe vera on them and he was fine.
Next, we get a view on how the Vists have reprogrammed Marita, making her believe that she's the youngest of 12 sisters who was unfrozen from cryosleep to suffer the realities of the world, with the Vist taking pity on her to give her purpose.
I am uncertain whether the sisters in cryosleep thing is part of the manipulation or her actual backstory in this revised timeline to explain why Puru and Puru 2 appear as younger than her to match their normal appearance from Double Zeta. Even though Double Zeta's events canonically in this timeline happened 8 years ago, so they should have aged themselves to look like Marita.
Bonninger's Aunt Martha is the villain in all this, trying to do all this to keep Laplace a secret as it ensures their power. But Bonninger's half-brother Alberto seems to have more of a conscience, and wants to save Marita from this mess, for some reason. Which leads to him betraying Martha and revealing their location to the Nahal Argama, drawing the assembled ships right to them. This cuts us away to Minerva, her negotiations with Riddy's father having fallen through, as she refused to let herself be used as a figurehead and hostage for the Federation against the Neo-Zeon dissidents. Riddy tries talking her into running away from it all, as her family line is a rallying cry to the oppressed, but she recognizes that for what it is, an abandonment of the people just for her own comforts, and she refuses to be that callous towards others. But it turns out the base Minerva's at, and the one Marita is at, are the same installation, and G-Hound, who runs it, refuses to let them go, leading to another rumble. The Banshee is deployed immediately, and our focus is to get to Marita first, requiring the Puru sisters and Judao face her. Jared is also here, drawing in Camille as backup, but he's not really involved here, beyond holding Jared off as Riddy comes in on G-Hound's side, angry and gunning for Bonninger because Minerva keeps shoving his attempts at affection in his face and he thinks it's Bonninger's fault.
Dude, take the hint. She's just not into you. My god, it's like dealing with a male quest.
But yeah, confront Marita with their sisters and Judao, and their power affects Marita enough that her memory is jarred free, and she abandons the Banshee. Everyone else covers Bonninger as he enters the base on foot, managing to find Minerva, but also Riddy, who he tries to reason with by asking if he's actually noticed how oddly the Federation's been acting.
Okay, I know it seems like I'm beating a dead horse at this point and repeating this, but how the Federation is acting in this game is its default canon state.
And of course, Riddy refuses to listen, thinking it's all about being a good soldier and staying strong and following orders, and the Federation should quickly win the war with a decisive strike.
And this is literally a regurgitation of fascist Nazi propaganda! Do I need to make this any more clear, people?
And it all justified in Riddy's mind because people like Marita, those born in space, aren't people. They're property. Just to add an entirely new level of dislike to this guy. And he has the gall to say that Bonninger's recognition of Marita's base humanity is just lip service. Fuck this guy. It's not like Super Robot Wars V is exaggerating how unlikable the guy is. He does this crap in the main story as well. There's just less time to dwell on it. But this is honestly a different perspective on how callous he acts against Lonnie in the anime. He legitimately doesn't think any non-Earther deserves any rights. Anyways, Bonninger gets Minerva out, as Marita comes across them, still battling with herself between the brainwashing and her true self, with it finally being Zimmerman, who did what he said he'd do and came for her after the Dakar battle, which proves itself the deciding push to help Marita come back to herself. As the man who became her father in all but blood puts his life on the line to come and save her. Bonninger gets her out of there, Minerva staying with her as the Garancius leaves the battlefield, as the Federation's base is also attacked by the Gardim and the returning Ghoulie, who's ready for a rematch with Soji. Dialogue also gives away that the Gardeem, they can jump between the 3 dimensions we've acquainted ourselves with at will, and is attacking them simultaneously. As they keep us busy, Riddy steals the Banshee and escapes, to be seen again later after it gets an upgrade. Still, because Nine's learned throughout all these events about having faith in the people you care about, she releases the Vangre's limiters so Soji can go all out against Ghoulie and his unit like he wanted to do many, many stages ago. Unfortunately, before we can finish him off, he's given an order to retreat. The crew discuss all these events, including how Riddy left behind the Delta Plus for them to need to assign a pilot.
Oh yeah, I haven't mentioned that. A bunch of the Universal Century pilots can freely swap mechs. Camille, Rue, and Judao, for example, all being able to pilot the Zeta. Honestly, the Zeta gets the most out of it when Camille's piloting it, but unfortunately the Reed GZ is kind of a piece of crap, so it's not fun to downgrade Rue to it as you end up having to do in the other games. Well, that or let her pilot the Nu in X or T after Amuro gets his high Nu Gundam upgrade. And I forgot whether she can take over the Delta Plus, but the Delta Plus certainly fits her better if the Zeta's not on the market.
So once again, it's time to rewind events and shift things back to the other side of our team and hit the 80 Dimensions events in this long route split, with the parallel boson jump guided by the Vilkis and Akito's jumper abilities being a complete success, with them making port back in Maito's stomping grounds of New Bell, Tokyo. A month's passed over here with everything being quiet, though that peace ends the second we return. Soji in this route, finding Chutosei's just completely gone without much word on where she's went, while Maito goes to see Sally, who's been worried about him, and who should show to make a mess of things, but a rock star named Purple.
Okay, I don't know if it's a stage name thing for him to go by that, but I swear this would make more sense if his name was the Japanese equivalent Murasaki, as there is a long history of characters and people being named after or in reference to colors. Akane Shinjo, Aoi Kisaragi, Yumeria Moegi, any person named Momo, as Peach is also a color, Shiro Emiya, the list goes on. Why he doesn't? I don't know. All I know is...
But in purple, I am stunning!
Purple's music is all about death and destruction, harm and havoc, pain and suffering!
Oh, so he's a Death Clock groupie.
And yeah, something's off about him. But whatever. Maito's company throws all the returning pilots a party, where Maito's best friend and tech whiz, Hamada, introduces them to his new assistant and girlfriend, Luna Naito. Yes, seriously. Who's really into mecha. Specifically the Zombot 3 with its lunar warrior look.
You know, something seems pretty sus about her.
As the party breaks up later, though, Joe appears from out of the shadows to have a proper throwdown with Maito at last. And sure enough, as everyone's preparing, it turns out Luna is an imposter among us. She actually works for Mifune, as is deduced by Akito, because Akito is dangerously genre-savvy from his years of watching Super Robot anime.
Once again, witness the power of fanboyism used for good.
Akito convinces her to leave, and not invite unwanted tragedy upon those infatuated with her, if only to spare them that pain. So the next morning, Joe and Maito have it out, and due to Joe getting the hang of Hiryu, Maito loses. Both him and Gain ejecting from the Locomerizer main body to not take overwhelming damage, and unfortunately leaving the city defenseless.
The rest of our forces are literally right there watching this.
For Mifune to now invade and take over and remake his old-time Edo, Japan, with Luna, actual name Kocho, piloting one of his mecha. Obviously, this is an event encounter, with me using Kira and Akito to rescue her from a fate of death or enslavement to a wannabe samurai that could give Tatewaki Kuno a run for his money in the delusion department. For as is showcased by the event that plays out, Mifune has no regards for civilian life. So when he tries to attack Hamada, Kocho intervenes and fully breaks from his service to be Luna by Hamada's side. It's a side that just so happens to have worked on a side project.
What? This is a Super Robot show in the 90s. Of course the main mecha would have a secondary unit and upgrade parts.
Change Maito Kaiser! Maito Kaiser! Kido!
の翼に勇気を込めて回せ正義の大車輪勇者特急マイトカイザーご期待通りにただいま到着
And with the locomorizer being repaired while Gain gets some rest, Maito can go it alone with the Kaiser parts and their own mech.
Oh, and if you managed something earlier, he's not the only one.
黒い翼に望みを乗せてモセ平和の青信号勇者特急ブラックマイトガイ英国通りにただいま到着
Once again, I fucking love this game!
お前が平和を乱す限り容赦はしないマイトカイザー必殺のドリル攻撃受けてみろドリルクラッシャー装着完了じゃーこれがマイトカイザーの力だお前は
With the power of the ultimate weapon in these kinds of media, a drill, Maito sends Joe packing, while I let Kappe and the Zambot 3 take point with Mifune, so we can not only try out its brand new ion cannon, but also the fact it's now unlocked its combo attack with Daitarn as well.
よしでは行くぞ日輪の力を借りて今必殺の
Gain's going to be fine, by the way. We'll be piloting Mike Kaiser for a while, though. Joe, however, can't believe he got humiliated by a new mech like he did, even as Sally, being a cinnamon roll, treats Joe's injuries from the fight for him. He tries to sell himself as an amoral villain, but Sally can see right through that, making Joe reveal his tragic backstory of his father being murdered by a man he's tried to track down on the dark side of the rails, and playing the role of the antagonist suits his needs to getting close to them to be able to confront him in person. We also have a post-scene with Luna, her agreeing to stay off the battlefield from now on. Though Akito had a role in saving one relationship, his own is still in the clutches of the successors, who become the next focus of this route. Their research of the calculation unit with Eureka installed within it, finding there's no way to 100% control it. Thoughts and wishes from the host controller will always leak through to it, meaning it's worthless to them in attempting to perform a near-bloodless coup against the current AD government.
I mean, aside from the influence of the founding nations, everyone involved with the past administration's atrocities has been removed, so unlike the mess in the UC timeline, these guys are clearly trying for a power grab.
Unfortunately, due to their methods in securing jumpers, they all know they've got targets in their heads, so no one with the skill is going to be willing to work with them. All they can do is hope Hokushin can stop Akito. With Celestial Being, Sumeragi updates Jill on them finding the dragons being native to the UC dimension, trusting Jill to keep that on the down low, as they know Jill's true identity, which she's trying to keep hidden. That's of an infamous fallen princess named Electra, who, like Ange, was another Norma born into a royal line, but had her identity guarded until maturity. It connected some dots for Sumeragi, who realizes Jill is using Celestial Being and the others as part of her own plans to strike back at the founding nations for inciting all this meaningless death just for their own benefits.
There is more to her grudge, but we're not there yet. The Cliff Notes, a lot of people died for her.
She instead deflects the question by revealing Kigali and Marina went missing a while back, which alarms them as heads of state being missing for this long. Nothing good comes of that. With Akito and Ruri, the damaged man's reconsidering his own actions as of late in the wake of the Luna stuff, and realizes that his original intention to just save Eureka and leave might have been extremely selfish.
It's actually what he does in Prince of Darkness. Rescues his wife and then abandons her without word or reason. People hated that ending after everything we saw them go through to actually get together.
Thankfully, Akito's time away after failing to save her has given him a chance to get perspective. And now all he wants to do is wrap Yurika in his arms and never let go. However, Arsenal's gotten a lead on Yurika thanks to Hokushin?
It's a trap!
Yep, Hokushin tricked him into coming out all alone, so he could capture Akito for further use in their jumper experiments. Hokushin telling him Akito basically did this to himself. His hard-on for revenge made him ignore every resource available to him to actually get Yurika back easier and faster, and now he's reaping what he sowed. At least, he would have a month ago, as Akito actually told his comrades where he was going, as he has someone he wants to see on the other side of the battlefield. Hokushin shifts targets, trying to break the morale of the units by sinking the Nadesico B. However, the Nadesico B was always a loner, while they got ready for deployment the Nadesico C, who just by arriving annihilates Hokushin's reinforcements. And on it is Yurika?
Wait, what? Who the hell rescued her?
Yeah, that is not actually answered here. I ran through all the story segments here twice, and there's nothing providing that. I think the implication is Nadesico's financial backers Nurgle Heavy Industries managed to perform a raid in concert with the Jovian government to take down the Martian successor organization, as right after Yurika appears, we get a cutaway to Nurgle's CEO, Akatsuki, walking into their command center and arresting them with the assistance of other Nadesico characters. But for them actually tearing her out of the calculation unit to then be the dedicated boson jump calculator for the Nadesico C, yeah, nada. Regardless, we mop up the last of his team, with Akito going toe-to-toe with Hokushin, who once more escapes, for now. There's a happy reunion between Akito and Yurika, who doesn't care the damage he has to live with now, as long as they stay together. But with all that settled, there's a more pressing matter. Hokushin's assault on them was backed up by automated agents from the founding nations, meaning they were in part financing the successor's actions. Which brings Anj and Celia back to Jill's office, as with Jill being their senior, she has to know something about this, and also about the hidden capabilities of the Vilcus. After all, Anj is not the Vilcus' first rider, and however much Jill wants to bring Anj into the fold, she knows it's a bad time. For the Mitsurugi Empire has just announced the execution of Anj's sister Sophia, on Giulio's orders. For the same crime Giulio executed their parents for breaking, harboring a Norma.
Giulio is a massive dick, and it's all a lie.
Of course, Anj doesn't know that, her racing off to leave the island in assembled forces in order to save her, even if Sylvia may hate her, because to her, she's still family. And it's because of her that Sylvia is actually stuck in a wheelchair, from when she fell off a horse when they were younger.
One wonders in their advanced civilization why they didn't have the capability to fix that. And spoilers, they do. A big criticism represented by their nations is how utopias, especially magic utopias, can represent stagnation. If all the world's problems are solved, if you can get anything with magic and mana, then what is the impetus to work for anything? If Sylvia can function and get everything she wants without her legs, what's the point of her working to regain use of them? Because she hasn't. It's part of the enforced groupthink of the nations, that they don't think for themselves because they have all their needs satisfied, and are happy to blindly commit atrocities to maintain their status quo. And like a lot of Sunrise series, just change a few nouns and you can see it all being critical of prior Sunrise works. Say, replace Norma with new type, and it makes just as much sense.
So yeah, Anj has a guilt complex concerning Sylvia and wants to save her. And surprisingly, Hilda wants to help out with this. Much like Anj and Jill, Hilda was not brought to Arsenal as an infant, but actually can remember her mother, and desperately wants to go back to and see her again. As is revealed from this event, everything Hilda's done has been in pursuit of that goal, even going so far as to sell herself and her body to her unit's prior captain Zola, just for the smallest possibility of getting that chance, and she believes she actually was until Zola was killed by Anj's actions. It's actually the root cause for her hostility to Anj. She unintentionally destroyed what Hilda felt was her best chance to get home, and now she's not going to miss out on this new opportunity for anything, and Anj has no reason to deny her that help.
Not going to play the scene, nor the one that follows it where Hilda is beat up by cops, but it goes really badly for Hilda. Her mother replaced her, having a second daughter, and named that second daughter Hilda as well, erasing all evidence that she existed, and when Hilda came back, she does react violently, and breaks Hilda in doing so. It's again a showcasing how twisted and broken this utopia is, where they think family can just be replaced that easily. It honestly makes you feel sorry for her, up to a point.
Anj, in turn, has just as bad a reunion, both with her former schoolmates when she and Momoka borrow a hoverbike from them to get to the palace, and also the reveal that this entire thing was a setup in order to get Anj into Giulio and Sylvia's clutches, so they can have a proper execution. As for some reason, the pampered normal princess that was their parents' pride and joy, who they expected to not last a single battle, just won't die. And Sylvia herself believes Anj to be the source of everything that's gone wrong in her life, instead of it being so obviously the society their parents opposed. And thus, before they kill her, Sylvia is going to take her pound of flesh out of her beloved sister.
Once again, not showing clips of this despite how it would punctuate the point Cross Anj had with this storyline. It's a bit violent, and I do not get off on torture porn. Bottom line, these people are not worth saving. As though they call Norma the monsters in their midst, the cruelty shown to those born without their innate gift to harness mana shows the true inhumanity of this society, and the refusal for them to move beyond their base wants and understand empathy for those born different to them. And once again, spoilers for later, it's eventually revealed that the citizens of the Mana Society are not even human. The entire cross-age setting that's represented by the founding nations in this game is made up of a population of genetically created designer homunculi, slave to Stupid Hair's will, that have just enough human genetics with them that every so often an actual human is born free of Stupid Hair's eugenics and ability to freely control. That being what the Norma actually are. Real humans. It's actually why Stupid Hair programmed the nation's citizens to hate Norma, as real humans being born from his creations are evidence of his failure to engineer something better than what he considered a failed primate race, organizing Arsenal as their death sentence for defying his will by being born, as part of the Sims' gigantic god complex.
So yeah, Anj is slated for execution. And yet, even when she's taken out in front of all the citizens that once considered her their crown jewel and role model, seeing the faces spewing bile and hate at her now, she can't seem to care. As she realizes that it was all fake to begin with. As much as the Arsenal girls might have hated her, at least their feelings towards her were real and for tangible reasons, as opposed to them hating her for something beyond her control. If they want to be this stupid, let them wallow in their ignorance until their world crumbles around them. She's going to go back to the people who actually matter.
Eternal story.
That is my mother's song. You have no right to sing it.
This song is my guiding light. My mother wanted me to carry it with me. I won't die. I won't give up. Go ahead. Kill me if you can.
Of course, in Super Robot Wars, it is not as easy as Tusk coming in on his hoverbike to rescue the princess from her evil family. Vilcus heeding Anj's call like in the Bontakun bonus stage and warping itself to her, so we can fight our way out with support from the Nadesco and everyone Anj calls friend. Tusk even managing to get out from storage his mother's own Paramel, the Arquebus, I cannot pronounce that word, as his mom was a Norma Pale Rider herself, which both shocks the other male riders and gets some ribbing from their other allies over Anj and Tusk potentially being a thing.
If you're wondering how, in their canon there was this other group of people not created by Stupid Hair on their world, called the Ancient Humans. people who left their originating world and opposed Stupid Hare's will. They eventually became allies of Arsenal's, and one of their men got together with Tusk's mom, but died in an incident that took place years prior, where Jill was the only survivor. Suffice it to say, Jill's got a lot of guilt tied to that incident, and it is a motivator for a lot of her own actions, including her manipulating Salia, that is tied to why Salia wanted the Vilcus.
Our goal in this stage, though, is just to escape in 5 turns by the Nadesco hitting the edge of the map. It's actually a pretty easy task considering our arsenal of freedom and justice over here. Though, fair warning, the attack points for this stage are kind of hard to get. They require you to successfully have Tusk perform a support attack with Anj, an allusion to the next stage of their canonical relationship, but if you've not given Anj boost support skills in the pilot customization window, it can be a pain to get it to trigger. But at least you'll have more targets to try against it, as the dragons suddenly invade the Mitsurugi Empire, which baffles and angers Salia, as Jill should have let them know that they showed up.
To be fair, she only knows when they show up because she gets a phone call telling her when to expect a singular to open. As you know who normally is in charge of doing that? The Holy Mitsurugi Empire. You know, the ones they're trying to flee from.
In fact, the dragons figured out how to open singulars themselves recently when they got the Enryugo to work, and are attacking the Mitsurugi Empire now in hopes to end the atrocities the founding nations have inflicted upon their people. Not that the main cast actually knows that yet. Akito coming in with Hilda as emergency backup, with Hilda and Anj sharing words that if their homes won't accept them, then they'll build their own place to belong.
And then they kiss, because damn it, everything is gay about this. No, really!
What's gotten into you?
Welcome home, princess.
To be fair, that actually happens much later in Cross Anj's story. What happens first is both women are thrown in lockup for desertion, which is where they actually get their proper bonding that results in Anj beginning to build her harem, as Hilda has no reason to hide who she is or use people anymore. It's not every day you see a series legitimately encourage a scenario where the lead woman of the series is simultaneously in a relationship with a doofus guy and a tsundere girl as their endgame.
This world's hurt me, shamed me, and betrayed me too many times already. It's time for some payback.
Geez, princess. All you gotta say is, I'm pissed off, all right?
All right then. I'm pissed off. So pissed off that I'm gonna destroy this world.
I think I want to help you out. There's a few things I'd like to destroy for myself.
Oh yeah? What kind of things?
But to do all this, Hilda seriously damaged her relationship with Chris and Rosalie, which Akito encourages her to correct in the event their last words are all things they can't take back. However, Hilda and Anj are released early when a dragon happens to wander into Arsenal, it knowing Anj's song, and summarily revealed when Anj gets it to calm down with said song's eternal story to be Vivian, as Vivian is actually a dragon in human form.
Okay, when I watched Cross Ange, I got this hilarious mental picture I just have to share. Vivian in English is voiced by Brittany Karbowski, who is more famous for voicing Mikoto Misaka and her clones, the Misaka sisters, in the Raildex franchise of A Certain Magical Index, Scientific Railgun, and Accelerator. Mikoto is considered the lead female protagonist of the franchise, and her love interest and main protagonist of it, the eternally misfortunate Toma Kamijo, also has a recurring habit of ending up transmuting himself into a dragon. So now I've got this image of both of them in dragon form stuck in my head, and it refuses to leave. I really hope the New Testament novels get their chance at an anime adaptation and aren't horribly rushed to the detriment of their story like Index Season 3 was. I really like the Raildex series.
Jill and her associates who run Arsenal are actually well aware of this. Normally using a medicine distilled into the lollipops that Vivian regularly has on her, to dispense it and hide her secret from the normal recruits of the island, correctly thinking they wouldn't understand after their long indoctrination that the dragons aren't their enemy.
Which further gives Vivian and the dub more amusing Raildex connections, considering the chemicaloids who only don't die because of a chemical agent delivered the same way.
But now that the secret's out, they need to do some explaining, as does Julio to Jibril and Stupid Hair for him letting things get so out of control, and the revelation that the only reason Embryo hasn't wiped out the Mitsurugi Empire like he's actually been doing behind the scenes to every other founding nation is it is the resting place of an artifact known as the Pillar of Dawn, which is what creates and maintains the mana for the nations, which is something Embryo still needs, and the dragons are desperate to liberate. So Stupid Hair suggests a third option than continuing the war with the dragons. Reset the world using his creations, the Ragnamail.
Dude, that's what got you into this mess. See, the Ragnamail are the predecessors of the Paramail. Think of the Paramail as their weaker mass production counterparts. The Vilkis is actually a Ragnamail, part of why it's a special unit and has all the special features. Those were stripped out when Stupid Hair decided to repurpose the Norma as his culture's weapons. They were originally designed for space and transdimensional travel, but then Stupid Hair went all god complex and decided it was his right to remake the world in his image to root out the causes of all war. And yeah, he failed.
Of course, Julio is being played to buy into this genocidal plan, not understanding that Stupid Hair has no intention of actually bringing him with. Stupid Hair just needs him to be a distraction that will allow him to trick Norma to his cause, as Embryo's creations are completely incapable of using that technology. Thus, to do the world reset, Stupid Hair has to manipulate people he cannot control by default. Back with Arsenal, Jill's finally ready to start giving up her secrets, starting with telling them the backstory of God, aka Stupid Hair. As she gets more into the metaphysical side of this, and I don't want to retcon this later, let's just get this out of the way. Embryo was a scientist researching new means of power who during one of his experiments got unstuck from space-time. Effectively becoming immortal, he decided to play God and create a new humanity, using his Ragnamail creations whose powers warped space-time, to simultaneously destroy his old world and create his own for his new designer humanity, his failures, and also survivors of the old world that followed Stupid Hair over, referred to as the Ancient People, populating the rest of the world.
In this amalgamated setting, though, that is slightly different, in that Embryo came from the UC dimension after he went all Dr. Manhattan, then ended up and began his mass eugenics experiment in the AD dimension. Due to resource wars and the backstory of these series devastating much of the world's government, when the nations started consolidating into major power blocks, the founding nations came in and became the ruling benefactors of each one. Thus, they're not really the founders, but no one's around to tell them they've only existed for 500 years.
The ancients were able to wrest one of Stupid Hair's Ragnamail from him, that being the Vilkis, which they hoped one day could be a weapon against him and end his manipulations of the world. Problem was, Vilkis' power had fail-safes in them. Each of the founding nation's royal families had genes from the Ragnamail's original riders. Thus, without Stupid Hair to remove those locks, they would only recognize individuals from those lines. Plus, a royal ring, which was the originating signet of the riders, and knowledge of the song Eternal Story as a three-piece key to the mecha's true power. Thus why all this time, they needed a Norma from the Mitsurugi line to awaken it, as they were the keepers of that song. As the last time they got a Norma out of a royal family line, Jill herself, real name being Electra Myra von Levenhertz, they got it to work, but it showed nowhere near the power Anj has been able to get out of Vilkis. The Ancient People had before this fallen into alliance with Arsenal to oppose Stupid Hair, and 10 years before had assembled all their forces to counter him in attack, with Vilkis intended to lead the charge. However, Embryo used his power upon her to subjugate her will to him, and while he can't fully mind control her or any of the Norma, he is capable of enough mental manipulation that it made her forget everything but him, and he proceeded to rape her, distracting her until every single one of her allies were slaughtered while she was in bed with him. It was a betrayal that ultimately destroyed her from her own self-revulsion, and led Jill on her own slow-burn revenge quest to use every resource to avenge the friend she failed, which is in part of why, in V, she's been so open to collaboration with everyone, as she decided to use them as well.
The other reason part of that is due to the amalgamated setting of the story fusions. Yeah, the ancient peoples could spread out a bit farther and hide among the normal humans that were native to the AD dimension, and thus influence other events as a means to eventually counter Stupid Hair from multiple angles. The Coordinators, Aelia Shenberg's plan with the Innovators and Celestial Being, the Class A Jumpers and Jovians, even Daitarn's Megaroids, all ultimately branching schemes in this world to take down Embryo as he couldn't control them, and thus a reason why every government being manipulated in this world controlled by Embryo or his minions has been going out of their way to try and massacre the lot of them. Not because he thinks they could ever kill him. Oh no, if he died, his body just gets unstuck from time again and returns to a previous state of being.
Say your prayers, God.
No, wait!
You're quite passionate, aren't you? Although, I suppose that is a good quality to look for in a wife.
No, the reason he wants them all dead is because they showed him as the impotent twat he is. His creations couldn't do half what they could with mana that a coordinator could potentially develop to be. Celestial Being was a better anti-war agency than his founding nation's own efforts to bring about that control on the world. The Jovians and other space colonists made themselves completely independent of his dominion in various ways, and obviously, that would not do. Embryo is defined in the story by two things: his god complex and his inferiority complex, with one instigating his actions as a defense for the other. He has to be the one in control, has to be the one that defines, commands, and tunes the world to keep it running, has to have women fawn over him and kingdoms bow down in fealty before his senior might and understanding, and has to control every little part of their lives to show everyone his way is best. But every time, his solution makes things worse, and a larger populace that has the will to recognize it always rejects him because of it. It emasculates him, humiliates him, exposes how tiny, weak, and pitiful a mortal man he is to be upstaged. And for that, he believes they have to die. Because it was never about them, it is always about him.
The best way to describe Embryo as a character in Cross Age is he is representative for toxic masculinity and privilege, with how he makes everything in the world about either him or about hiding his own failures to make a functioning system behind manipulations, lies, and deceit, despite how crumbling it actually is. Oh, he has power, but they are ultimately in the end just distortions of natural orders he disrupts, never really capable of creating in his own right successfully. He is a textbook case of a megalomaniac false god, and one of the reasons I actually like Cross Age is not because of him, but in how they literally tear down every pillar of this smug bastard until he has nothing left, because he was that incompetent and incapable of actually building anything stable on his own. Because his base core of building all that was flawed to begin with. Still, Anj is hesitant to agree to being the point woman on taking down Embryo. After all, her life was built on lies, and she's never even met Stupid Hair in person. From her perspective, while this all explains a lot, Jill doesn't exactly have the evidence behind her to back it up beyond her word. And it's not a word Anj thinks she can trust blindly. So that's all tabled for now, as another Dragon Cause Singular opens, unleashing an entire swarm of dragons they are not prepared to face. But in V, it's not on Arsenal's base, but on Orb. As the team scrambles to counter them, Vivian recovers enough to be able to fight, acknowledging her dragon heritage but unwilling to let them go after people not involved. Kira and Anj likewise admitting that while the dragons may be a branch of humans that can be reasoned with, they aren't going to let people die if they can help it. Hilda does her best to reconcile with Chris and Rosalie, while Shin notices that Salia seems to be slipping more into her obsession of being some use to Jill's own plan, even if she's failed to claim the Vilcus, making Shin ask both her and himself, just what are they even fighting for anymore? Maybe in the end their answers can be found in battle, as the Paramount of the Dragons, the Enryugo, enters the picture once again, Anj charging it to see if she can't get the dragon side of the story from Sala. It ultimately takes Setsuna's intervention with the Quantau's quantum burst system to bypass Sala's bullheadedness, to actually listen to any question posed, as she still thinks the Vilkis is under the command of Embryo's forces, thus is her enemy. But before they can clarify that, we've got the 80-dimension encounter with more forces of Gardeems, including Ghoulie.
Once again, spoilers that give context to this and why both routes are equally canon, just with Soji being on one side or another. See, Ghoulie's a robot. A mass-produced robot that also shares his memories with every copy of itself when it's destroyed and uploaded back into the system.
And Sala doesn't take kindly to his intrusion or the callous slaughter for people, so she joins with us for a little payback, which discuss Ghoulie and how someone can so easily turn their back on a cause to team with an enemy. To which Kira responds, "What's wrong with that? Not every opponent is an existential threat to you. Sometimes they do just make a bad choice that puts them on the opposite side." Ghoulie's response in turn is that failure of any sort proves a defect, one that should be erased from the perfection of the whole, and that sets Shin off. As deciding how people should live, controlling every aspect of it, deciding a life is worthless just because it wasn't the way you wanted it, that's the cycle he already experienced before, was deceived into buying into, and it led to nothing but misery. It's time for him to stop being led around by others' plans or ideals, shackled to a cause of living to fulfill the wishes of others, dead or alive, and take his own destiny into his own hands. He will now walk with his eyes open to the world, and accept the reality of it as he strives alongside others to achieve an ideal of a world without war. And this is where Lacus shows up, in command of the Eternal.
Meaning on top of Shin taking a level in badass, Kira and Othrin just got their support gear. Meteor on! Ready?
頼むぞキラ、いい手をリフト。
力だけでも守りたい世界のために。
Woo! Man, I feel like I need a cigarette or something after that. The only downside, though, is Kira and Othrin only get access to the meteors when you deploy the Eternal in battle. And the Eternal is more intended as a support ship, and not necessarily a battleship like, say, the Archangel is. While it is supposed to be able to utilize the meteor weapons platforms as fixed armaments when they are not being utilized by the Freedom and Justice, we don't actually ever see that in Seed, Destiny, or any of the video games that feature those series. Apocrypha material says they should be able to do it, but we've literally never seen it in anything as far as I'm aware. I would still use it over the Rock Callium, though.
So with Guli and Gardim routed, Salad still wants to have it out with Anj. But now that Anj knows more about the Vilkis, well, now she knows the true value of the legacy of her mother that she has kept. Their simultaneous use of the Discord Feather warps reality again, sending them both back to the Universal Century dimension. Anj and Tusk landing outside the Love Hotel. Mulaflaga?
Ha! I get it. Why were Mulaflaga and Maru Ramius not in this game?
Thinking they're going to be stranded until they can get picked up by Londo Bell, Anj tries to bond a little with Tusk. After all, for everything he's done for her, he's high in her list of paramours. Tusk in turn revealing that, well, he's a coward. Like his parents, Jill wanted him to be a Knight of Vilkis, to stand to protect the next rider of the Mail to avenge his parents, and he ran away, unwilling to fight for someone he'd never known. It wasn't until he met Anj that he likewise stopped running away, as now he too had found someone to fight for.
This sequence abridges a lot of their relationship building episodes after everything went to hell in their canon, again for understandable reasons. In Cross Age, they have a few episodes to work it all out amidst surviving in post-apocalyptic ruins. Here, the world they end up in is still populated.
And to that effect, they're quickly found by Vivian alongside Sala's subordinates Kaname and Naga, and brought to the dragon's homeland on True Earth.
Okay, no, we're not calling it that. Origin Earth works better without feeding the caustic ego of Tamino.
They're brought to see the leaders of the dragons, who explain more of the backstory for Cross Age that I already went over about Draganium. If you missed that, it's a crystal that absorbs and stores radiation, and the dragons have augmented their bodies using it to absorb and be immune to radiation, and work to purify the world of said radiation by storing it in new crystals their bodies can generate. Thousands of years in the past, before the current Universal Century Age, a war broke out over control and use of Draganium, as it was both used to save humanity, but also in embryo's hands doomed it. The dragons, like Tusk's ancestors, the Ancients, are survivors of that cataclysm, but as they resided in that poisoned world, altered their bodies in order to both survive, and also undo the damage they did, stepping aside for the next generation of humanity to thrive without being weighed down by the interference and mistakes of their elders.
The timesync for these events, though, is off. That can happen with series involving multiverses. Time in one universe is not always the same as the flow of time in another. Well, that or Stupid Hair left his plans in limbo for a few millennia, or he doesn't like to talk about his prior generations of failures.
So yeah, Embryo trying to play God with an entire multiverse, that's actually canon to the story. Anj and Sala, when their twin Discord feather attacks struck each other, right after that in the Dimension Warp, they saw distorted images of other places and times where the two were able to meet, several of which had the two being lovers. But here's where we get to what the dragons are after in this side of the story. As if it were just about what was being done to them, well, they'd attack Arsenal and be done with it. But the real issue is what actually creates mana for the founding nations. Aura, the first human to become a dragon, and allowed the transmutation of other survivors of the Cataclysm into dragons themselves. Because Aura's actions were another example of how Stupid Hair was impotent at his own freaking specialty, as he was incapable of giving his creations mana on his own, he kidnapped her, and enslaved her so her body, which had absorbed immense amounts of Draganium, would act as a channeling medium for the power stored in the crystals that then permits his creation's mana. But as that power was drained, that in turn led to Stupid Hair needing to recharge her, leading to the dragon hunts, forcing her to devour her children to power Stupid Hair's mana system.
I thought this was a cute girls and robots anime.
And thus, Sala's role in this. They somehow figured out how to reverse engineer the Ragnamail technology and built a trio of their own to be the point women in the Dragon Zone operation to free Aura, with Giulio's secretary and lover being a dragon spy in their midst who found out where she is. If they save her, the Founding Nations then can open the Singulars to abduct more of their people, as the source of their mana will be gone, and Stupid Hair's creations will lose all power to lord over others, no different than the Norma they are programmed to despise.
And hey, that would destroy the corrupt world of the nations like Anj and Hilda want, and humiliate Stupid Hair even further as his failed utopia falls apart in front of him. But the thing is, Anj is really obstinate at the idea of working with someone who's presented her all the solutions she wants in exchange for an alliance, and I don't entirely get why.
This is in the main series too, and the best way I could wrap my head around it is her being sick of being lied and manipulated to and used to fight for a cause that she doesn't trust anyone with their appeals, as she has no reason to trust their words. It's the best I have to explain it, at least, but Sala's been pretty consistent. Yes, they fought because of their respective sides and misunderstandings between them, but that hasn't changed one bit of how Sala acts.
So for Sala to earn Anj's respect, they compete in a bunch of games, and I honestly prefer the Super Robot Wars version of their competition. In the anime, the pair compete in a variety of sports because sexy, dammit. While in V, it turns out Sala's something of an ancient tech junkie, thus spend her time restoring the contents of an arcade, with no actual awareness that the entire location was meant for mindless entertainment. I like this version more, because it reveals how much of a dork Sala is, and her protests claim the opposite are the kind of defensive character you just can't fake, while also showing how much the dragon's isolation has also caused them to stagnate like the founding nations. And it's just as important for them to learn from those in their world to not repeat mistakes they say they're atoning for. Also, Vivian's here as well, wrapping up her character subplot by the dragon's doctors fixing her ability to change between her human and dragon forms, as well as meeting and bonding with her biological mother. It's really cute. But before Anj and Sally can face off with some fun, Stupid Hair shows that any barrier against his intrusion the dragons might have is entirely worthless. But instead of attacking anyone, he's here for Anj. He's had his eye on her for quite some time, and her defiance and ability to awaken Vilcus has entranced him, and now wants Anj as his bride.
I'd start calling the simp Gaston, but quite frankly, I prefer my nickname Stupid Hair for him.
That's part of his long game, however. At the moment, he just wants her to take part in a battle for Arsenal's survival against the Founding Nation's forces, Giulio attacking them to gather riders for the Ragnamail and letting the rest die because, racist and to deny Jill everything. The Allied forces, however, have no interest in being witnesses to a massacre, thus it's time once again for Celestial Being and the forces of Terminal to stage an armed intervention. Ian Vashti, the head tech of Celestial Being, updating the armaments of the Gundams so each of them have their full weapons loadouts, while also equipping Patrick's GNX-4 and Graham's Soul Brave with Trans Am capabilities. Hold out for 5 turns while eliminating 35 enemy units, and you win this battle, as Jill will be able to evacuate everyone to safety. But a couple turns in, Anj, Tusk, Vivian, and Sala join the fray. At the same time, Stupid Hair decides to bring his own mech, the Hysterica, into play. And as this is an event battle, with Stupid Hair being unstuck in time, yeah, there's no way to kill him here. The best you can do is have Anj unleash the Discord Feather point blank to continue his intrigue with the blonde, with him backing off for the moment, as he has different pawns to gather. Is him having Julio act to destroy the Norma after taking some recruits? All a plan to endear himself to Norma he would save from death, or offer bargains in exchange for their devotion. Chris is shot down mid-battle, Stupid Hair getting to her before Rosalie could save her herself, Ursha being taken in bargain for saving the Norma children's lives as she acted in her spare time as a second mother to many of the orphans, and Salia, well, she's at her breaking point with Jill not recognizing her worth, and someone coming in to shower her with affection, who saves her when the prior one they were devoted to abandoned them. It is loyalty easily swayed. Even Julio's antagonism of Anj is in its own way a plot of Stupid Hair's to garner affection from her, by removing on his own her greatest antagonist and the one who destroyed her life with his actions.
But the difference between Anj and the others is, her character arc has been driven primarily by her not being a wilting, defenseless princess thrown to the wolves that has to be saved by a white knight, but a woman learning to stand on her own besides others harmed by the world. Stupid Hair screams manipulative slime ball even before you learn what he did, and as a result, he vastly underestimates Anj's wants and needs, thus is incapable of manipulating her unlike the others.
Things turn out better here than in canon, though, as with events slightly shuffled to allow Sala to be part of the party, they're able to counter Stupid Hair's follow-up attempt to entirely annihilate Arsenal and all survivors with Hysterica's power. All 3 Ragna males using Discord Feather, and the ones from Anj and Sala cancelling out embryos and sending all the survivors over to the Universal Century Dimension. The spatial distortion making it so Embryo can't immediately follow. But he's got most of what he wanted, with 3 new women in his life to service his needs. This once more ends the route splits, with both groups of the Alliance rejoining and catching the other members back up to speed on everything, with Sal's presence allowing the exposition I gave earlier about Drganium being created from crystals that absorb Geta rays in this setting, and it being their action that prevented the UC Dimension from experiencing the full effects of Geta Robo Armageddon.
Which is unfortunate, cause it cut some of the parts of Armageddon that I really liked from getting showcased. Case in point, the character of Kei Kuruma, who's actually the protagonist of the rest of the OVA series after the time skip. Kei, being Dr. Saotome's second daughter, that grew up amnesiac after witnessing a combination of her elder sister being murdered by infestation by the invaders, and her father's resultant madness, and summarily taken in and raised by Benkei. Her story of confronting her father's madness and the after effects it wrought on the world, while working to fight back against them to save what's left, is another reason it's a really strong story, beyond it being another of the few Super Robot series I can name to have women be the lead character. My understanding on the reason why it doesn't get adapted is it having less to do with Kei being the protagonist, and more with a proper adaptation of the story requiring a post-apocalypse setting that doesn't allow it to work with most other Super Robot series outside of, say, Gurren Lagann or After War Gundam X. And with the story amalgamation, what causes the calamity can be in turn subverted in a lot of varying ways, such as what was done here with the dragons eating the Geta radiation that was supposed to poison the world and hyper-accelerate the invaders' infestation.
Still, the bonding of the groups, including Tusk pledging fealty to Anj as her knight, that's another step in their relationship, is curtailed by another angel coming into Assault Tokyo 3.
Well, it will be eventually. See, it's Sahawkwheel, who is about to perform its own colony drop.
Sahawkwheel's MO in Evangelion is, in order for it to penetrate the defenses of Tokyo 3 on behalf of its brethren, has turned itself into one gigantic bomb, hurling its mass at the Earth so when it reaches terminal velocity, its mass explodes. NERV got advanced warning of its existence because it keeps dropping parts of itself in order to course-correct itself so it'll drop straight on Tokyo 3 and annihilate the entire prefecture. Surprisingly though, it's one of the easiest of Evangelion's angels to deal with. All the Eva pilots need to do is thrust out their AT fields before Sahawkwheel can make touchdown, which will slow the angel down and prevent the kinetic energy it stored up from its drop from causing an explosion, thus leaving it entirely vulnerable.
The problem, of course, being the actual catching it part.
The complications arise, however, by Embryo being spiteful, the DG alliance of Maito's enemies being thrown across dimensions to Tokyo 3, and while we inform them of the danger coming to crash down on them, they attack if only in the hope that Stupid Hair will likewise get them out of here if they comply with his demands. Joe in particular calling out Maito for one final battle, with his upgraded mech the Goryu, which thrashes the Mike Kaiser. Joe once more ridiculing Maito for believing in things like justice that are clearly ideological constructs that can't make someone strong, as opposed to gain skill and power, at least until Tetsuya comes back in to give a pep talk. He's not here for Koji this time. The current crisis takes precedent, distracting Joe long enough for a delivery from the AD dimension to come through a boson jump gate. Gain is back and returning to service.
Meaning Mike Kaiser can finally perform its intended purpose as upgrade parts for Gain.
Let's my guy!
To dash!
Great Might Gain! 起動!
銀の翼に望みを乗せて飛ばせ平和の青信号勇者特急マイトガイン英国通りにただいま到着
Once again, I freaking love combining robots.
正義なき力など何の意味もないと俺が証明してみせる決めるぞガイン
了解全力で行く
動輪剣
グレート動輪剣
真っ向空竹割り
てーい
旋風寺マイトお前は
Still, Joe was playing up being a jackass so the assembled forces would be driven to take him out faster, thus thwarting Stupid Hair's own plans of tying up everyone's attention. With Joe off the field, the other DG mechs go down much faster, allowing the Evangelions to get the prep time they need to be ready to stop Sahakwil, but again with an assist from Maito.
After all, I spoiled this way back when I presented homages to the Wave Motion Gun. And this is another super powerful cannon that won't risk annihilating unintentional targets.
Though the Yamato actually is willing to use the Wave Motion Gun in this instance, the problem is they're prevented from doing so because of Gardeem's sabotage. Android agents of theirs infiltrating the ship and disrupting the power in the engines, so they couldn't fire the main gun even if they wanted to. This thus requiring another parallel boson jump from Maito's support team in order to deliver the final member of the Brave Express Corps, Might Gunner. Thing is, Gain used too much power to fully utilize Gunner. Thus, to make up for his part in screwing them over, Joe intervenes and allows Maito to drain the Goryu dry to perfectly charge Might Gain's third most powerful attack.
ガイガンナパーフェクトキャノンだ
了解変形パーフェクトキャノングレートマイトガインパーフェクトモード
ターゲットスコープオープンパーフェクトキャノン発射
Because of the Angel's AT field, the shot doesn't harm it, but it does bleed enough of its momentum that it makes it far easier and less risky for the Avas to intervene and do their job of catching Sahakwil. And it kinda pisses me off that of all the series here, it's the Evangelions that get the dedicated animated cutscene to end this event battle. Like, I love the attack animations for these games, but it is extremely rare that any of the mechs or characters get something dedicated like that for an event. At least it's continuing the abridged team building of the Ava cast that's been in the back burner for a time, with all the AI team members likewise welcoming Gain back into their midst.
Next time, however, we have another long overdue plot thread that needs resolving. After all, the Vangray is tearing itself apart.